They almost executed the prince for cowardice, but the night before his punishment, he had already saved the entire kingdom. I was there the day the king called his own son weak. The whole kingdom gathered in the palace square. The sun was hot, the ground was dry and cracked. For months, no rain had fallen. The farms were dying, children were hungry, the river was shrinking. People were angry, and when people are angry, they look for someone to blame. The king stood tall on the platform. His voice was loud. "My son," he said, pointing at the prince, "has no strength. While warriors train, he walks alone at night. While men prepare for war, he hides in the dark. A prince who fears battle cannot lead my people." The crowd murmured. Some agreed. Some looked unsure. The prince stood silent. He did not defend himself. He did not argue. He only lowered his head. That made the king even more angry. In our kingdom, silence looks like weakness. The king made his decision that day. If the drought does not end in 3 days, he declared, the prince will be stripped of his title. Stripped of his title. For a prince, that is worse than prison. That night, I could not sleep. I work in the palace kitchen. I see things others do not see. And I knew something the king did not. Every night after the palace slept, the prince left quietly. Not to hide, not to avoid training. He walked toward the old forest beyond the hills. I followed him once. I saw him kneel beside the dry riverbed. I saw him dig into the cracked earth with his bare hands. I saw him mixing herbs with water from a hidden spring deep in the forest. There was an old woman who lived there. People called her strange. Some said she was a witch. The prince called her grandmother. She knew the land. She knew the old ways. The prince had been learning from her in secret. While the warriors sharpened spears, he studied the soil. While the king shouted about strength, the prince searched for water beneath the ground. On the second night before the deadline, something changed. Clouds began to gather. Not heavy clouds, but small ones. The prince worked until his hands bled. He placed the herbal mixture into the cracked riverbed. He whispered something I could not hear. The old woman nodded slowly. "The land remembers kindness," she told him. The next morning, the sky was darker. The king thought it was luck. By afternoon, the wind grew stronger. By evening, thunder rolled across the hills. And before midnight, rain fell. Not a storm, but steady rain, the kind that sinks deep into the earth. The people cheered. Children danced in the mud. Farmers cried. The river slowly began to rise again. The king stood proudly on his balcony. "You see," he shouted, "the ancestors have answered me." He believed it was because of his prayers, his strength, his leadership. He was wrong. The next day, the old woman walked into the village. She never came to the palace before. The guards tried to stop her, but she was not afraid. "I have come to speak truth," she said. The king allowed her forward, amused. She pointed at the prince. "While you shamed him, he saved you. While you called him weak, he learned what you refused to understand. Strength is not only in the sword." The crowd grew quiet. The old woman told them everything. How the prince searched for hidden water beneath the hills. How he mixed herbs to soften the earth. How he spent months learning the language of the land. How he asked her for help while the king laughed at old traditions. I watched the king's face change. Pride turned to shock. Shock turned to silence. The crowd began to whisper again. This time not against a prince, against the king. The prince stepped forward. He did not look angry. He did not look proud. He looked tired. "I did not want praise," he said softly. "I only wanted our people to survive." That broke something in the king. For the first time in my life, I saw the king step down from his platform. He walked slowly toward his son. In front of everyone, he knelt. Gasps filled the air. A king does not kneel, but that day he did. "I was blind," he said. "I mistook silence for weakness. I mistook patience for fear." The prince helped him stand. The rain continued for 3 more days. The farm slowly healed. The river returned, and the kingdom changed. The king never again mocked quiet strength. The warriors began learning about the land, and the prince, he became something greater than a fighter.
he became a leader. Not because he shouted, not because he punished, but because he listened. And I will never forget that day, the day the kingdom almost punished its greatest protector, and the day a king learned that pride can blind even the strongest man.